People who bought this typically buy this. Amazon's form of upselling. What if we gave our account managers that? Companies who buy this typically will always buy this, this, and this. So that's what you need to sell.
Welcome to the Modern Selling Podcast, where we help the entire sales community to create more sales conversations with today's modern buyer. This includes anyone from entrepreneurs and business owners to sales reps and sales leaders. Each episode, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you find, engage, connect, and nurture your relationships with your buyers. I'm Mario Martinez Jr., your host, and you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Zant, the enterprise leader in sales engagement. Zant has authored the definitive guide to sales cadence. Get your copy at salescadenceguide.com. That's salescadenceguide.com. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. You have no idea who I've got with me, and I'm very, very, very excited. I've got the very well-known motivational keynote sales speaker and also the founder of Selling Group. You got it, Mr. Victor Antonio himself. Victor, welcome to the show, man.
Dude, I like the way you put that little Spanish flip on that thing. Victor Antonio. I like that, man. That was nice. That was sweet, man. That was sweet. Glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
That's the best Spanish I can give you.
Awesome.
You know, Victor, actually funny, I think there have only been 3 Latinos who've ever been on my show, and I'm one of them.
We're down to 2.
So I think you're one of the top 3. And what I love about the fact that I've got you on the show is because you do represent the Latino community. And if I'm not mistaken, you actually used to work and have a territory organization in Latin America, and you speak Spanish, right?
That is correct. So my family's originally from Puerto Rico, a little background story. They moved to Chicago in the late 50s. My mother had a 3rd grade education. My father had a 5th grade education. So we learned Spanish at home and then English on the street, because people are often surprised when I break into Spanish because they're like, dude, where's the accent?
Yeah.
And I'm like, tain't no accent. That's what you say when you're in Georgia. Tain't no accent. And so when I got into sales, eventually I wound up selling in Latin America and living down there.
Okay. And so you obviously are not someone who's been popular because of books, although you've written 13 books.
Correct.
13. And is it 14 coming out now?
14 coming up, man. Eventually, I will be discovered.
But this is what I love about you. Just if you're not following Victor, man, you guys, you got to follow Victor, because what I love about Victor is that it's raw, it's real, and it comes from the trenches. That's the thing that I love about you. And there's a lot of people who are out there that have thoughts and thought leadership that they're bringing to the marketplace. Some of them have been writing books forever in their life, and they have no practical experience. But that is not the case with my man, Victor Antonio. And Victor, just a little bit about the Selling Group. Talk a little bit about that and what you guys do there.
Fast forward through the whole thing. So I started out in engineering. So my background's, electrical engineering, MBA. So I really started developing wireless systems in the telecom business. And then they needed a guy to help sell in Latin America. Boom. That's how I got into Latin America. They were looking for a technical guy who spoke Spanish. By the way, at that time, I was living in Minnesota. Not many Latinos up there. So I was like, the job market was all for me to have. And so I started selling in Latin America. And then somewhere in 2001, I decided to kind of just launch on my own and start my own speaking career. I've been influenced by Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn. And so I wanted to do my own speaking and training. And that's how I eventually formed the Selling Group, which is sales training, keynote speaking, and the online platform called the Sales Velocity Academy. So it's all about sales and motivation. If you ask me, what are my 2 key words? Sales and motivation.
I love it. Well, we need a little bit of sales help and motivation. Can you give it to us today?
I think I can, man. I'm going to do my best. I'm here for you, Mario. I'm here for you, brother.
The things that have happened in 2020. Can 2020 be over yet?
No, we just started this, baby. This is it, man. The show has just started. And let's just say, look, man, this is like the perfect hero story, man. Look, here's what's going to happen. Everything was normal. Then there was an event. It's called the coronavirus. Now things are going to get worse. Then eventually the heroes show up and we'll come up to a new normal that'll be better than before. That's my belief.
That's very true. And now more than ever, I look at the world of sales and it's like, we all got to weather the storm. Everybody's feeling the impact from leader after leader of everybody I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks alone. Everybody has said, sales opportunities and pipeline has come to a screeching halt. And that is one of the challenges that we're living in right now. And it really is all about how we actually prepare ourselves right now for the future to be able to, hopefully, when things return back to normal sooner rather than later. Of course, I don't mean hopefully they will, but sooner rather than later, that we're in a position to be able to help our buyers still who are ready to take on that help. But
yeah, if I can insert, because it's a good point you're making. I posted something on LinkedIn today, say, somebody has pressed a pause button on the world. It's just a giant pause button right now. And I said, the only thing we can control is, I said three things, rethink what we're doing, retool what we're doing, how we're doing it, and then redirect our energies into whatever we think will work in the future. Because eventually somebody's going to hit that play button again.
That's exactly right. No, I love that point. A big giant pause button has been hit, and then somebody will eventually hit that play button. I love that. Hey, before I get into this topic about upselling, because I think this is extremely important, especially with the new book coming out and what you're talking about there. Tell us something nobody knows about yourself, even if they looked at your social profiles. And I'm looking for something juicy, man. Like, I've had everything from as boring as a couple kids, I do this in the evening or the night, to an extra appendage. So give me something good.
Dude, I love samurai movies.
Oh.
Like Akira Kurosawa, 1940, 1950, black and white, old samurai movies. Like, I am an addict. So I'm always online looking for Japanese movies. And I tell people this and they're like, "What? Why would you watch Japanese samurai movies?" I don't know. It's just in me. I love Japanese samurai. That's my guilty pleasure.
There you go. Japanese samurai. Where's your samurai sword? You got one?
I should have one. No, my wife won't let me have one. So, so for any samurai fans out there, they know the blind man Satoichi, and they know who Akira Kurosawa is. This is like some nerdy stuff, man. So yeah, I get real nerdy about this. My wife says, please stop talking about that.
I love it. All right. So samurai movies and no samurai sword, but I'll probably have to get you a gift. And
thank you, brother.
We'll have to hide it from your wife. How about that? Well, listen, you're coming out with the 14th book. My gosh, man, like, that is phenomenal. I'm still trying to work on the first. It's so hard to be able to bring thought leadership down in pen to paper, but you managed to do it. You're coming out with the 14th book, Upselling. First off, what the heck is upselling?
The title of the book is Upselling is the New Prospecting. I really kind of copped that title from like Orange is the New Black, so upselling is new prospecting.
Got it.
And I started thinking about, like anything else, I talk to a lot of companies. I train with a lot of companies, and I often ask them the question. I said, what are you struggling with? Victor, more sales. And I said, so what are you doing? And everybody says, we're trying to find, new clients, client acquisition, client prospect. And I said, what about upselling? They go, what? I go, what about upselling? Additional sales you can get. And depending on which study you believe, you can grow your revenues by 30, maybe even 40%, depending on, your market. So think about that for a second. On average, corporations typically give themselves 10 to 15% growth rates, right? They try to go be aggressive. So imagine now you have this reservoir called 30%. Let's just use 30%. Why not tap into that? They're not even cold leads. They're warm leads. You've already sold to them. And so that's where the idea came in. Maybe I was watching Orange is the New Black and the thought of upselling just popped into my head. I said, why aren't they looking at that as a new way of prospecting for more business?
Yeah.
Now more than ever.
A lot of larger organizations end up doing client acquisition and then turning it over to a farmer team or an account management team for those individuals to go ahead and upsell into those organizations. And then a lot of compensation plans are purely focused in on go hunt, new business. But to your point, first off, when times are hard, you go into your existing customer base.
Absolutely.
That's the best place to go, right? And when you're not meeting quota, you go back to your existing customer base. Like, get that base to continue to produce and drive more revenue. So that makes a lot of sense. What is the response in the marketplace? Everybody's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. And then I go, and the thing is two things. One, this division of labor you raise, it makes sense, right? bring in the new client, hand it over to an account manager. And hopefully the account manager is not a farmer, is a true hunter and does know how to do upselling and cross-selling. And then again, go out and find new prospects. But again, every time, I'm talking better than 9 out of 10 companies, when I ask them, do you have upselling as part of your process? They say no. I think 30 to 35% don't even have a sales process, let alone are they going to have an upselling process. Think about it. Most companies don't even have a referral process.
Right.
And to me, by the way, a referral is another form of upselling, right? I have to upsell this customer on giving me a lead that will generate more revenue for me. And so many companies simply don't have an upselling process. And as I always say, and I state this in the book, if it's not part of the process, it doesn't get done. And so I think upselling or cross-selling is an afterthought.
Yeah. I want to come back to something you just said a second ago. Hopefully, you said when we're talking about a hunter transitioning an account over to their account manager who's going to manage the account, you said hopefully they're a hunter, not a farmer.
Correct.
So they can actually upsell and cross-sell. Talk a little bit more about that, because that's a very important point. And I've managed both teams. I've had both organizations underneath me before. And it's a very different seller, and it's a very different type of seller. So talk a little bit about that, because that's an important point for the leaders that are listening in right now.
Let's take a step back. A compensation plan should be designed where the person who brought the account in is to some extent still compensated for the upselling going on by the account manager.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I think it's very demotivating to hand over something and still not get compensated down the road when I did all the work to find that person.
Exactly.
So now looking at the account manager who now is handed this account, too often the default, and I guess maybe I'm being too harsh, but I think it is the default, is just service the customer.
Right.
Make them happier. When our job as an account manager is to really figure out, what did I miss? What did the salesperson miss that we didn't sell them on? Or maybe the salesperson mentioned something and now's the time to really go with the upsell. That's why I think if you have a true salesperson matched up with a good account manager who does all the, I'll say, the back end stuff, and they're working together, can you imagine that 1-2 combination? The salesperson says, look, I'm handing this guy over. I know I didn't get full wallet share here. In other words, I didn't sell him everything I could. Here are the 3 things I mentioned to him. Here are the 3 things I want you to follow up with and make sure we upsell him on that. That's the 1-2 combination you want. But too often we hand it over. The account manager is compensated on managing the account and not growing the account. So again, compensation kicks in again. I'm a real stickler about this, Mario, that unless you have great compensation plans, you will not modify behaviors.
Yeah.
Everything reverts to default.
So funny you mentioned that, Victor, because even within our own little small company, Kurt Shaver, our chief sales officer, he is a brilliant seller and he has taken on the sales organization. I took on our customer success and delivery and implementation organization. But the key here is we know with a certainty that we never, ever, ever sell full total wallet potential on deal number 1.
Correct.
It happens on deal 2, 3, 4, and it can be the gift that keeps on giving. So strategically, we took, I believe I'm a really great salesperson. We took someone who understands sales, put them into customer success and delivery, and is delivering on high customer satisfaction, high results, focused on changing behavior. And at the same time, in our case, we work with sales leaders, working with the sales leaders to help transition their mind, their thought process, and get them moving in this right direction and let them see the hallelujah moment. And then what happens is the following. Oh my gosh, we need to roll this out to the rest of the sales organization. And I think a lot of sales organizations forget this process, and account managers really get into that, what you call just managing or babysitting an account.
Correct.
And that was always something that frustrated me as a sales leader, is like, no, I don't need a farmer. I need a hunter who's willing to be able to take a little bit more time to help a customer out to get to the end result.
I like the concept. And I jotted down a note because I talk about this in the book and I didn't want to forget it, is that imagine that if you had an option to choose a deal that was $1 million versus a deal that was $500,000. The immediate response from a salesperson thinking short term is like, dude, I want the $1 million, right? But if we throw into the equation customer lifetime value,
right?
Starbucks uses a number of 20 years to measure customer lifetime value.
Yeah.
I like to use the metric of 3 years. I think that's reasonable. 20 years is incredible. But that's where the account manager kicks in. What if this one account we brought in now has a 3 to 5 year lifespan? And in those 3 to 5 years, we're going to actually sell them more than we did on the original deal that the salesperson got.
Generally, you always will.
That's the mindset. And I think that's the shift in upselling, right? The thinking that bring them in is one thing, but growing them over time, that's the long game. That's the long game.
Yeah. So I'll give you a great example. We recently bought the tool Ignite, and it was to provide a secure file server system for us, for the whole company to be able to operate on. I had a phenomenal sales rep. She was awesome, right? And within a 30-day period after we signed the contract, she reached out to me and was like, hey, what about this? Do you need this? Do you need that? It took us 120 days to get rolled over and implemented. After 30 days of signing a contract, she was out, and I got transitioned over to an account manager. Now, you better believe that this seller, who took 4 months to sell me this deal, our company, of which I was the chief buyer, this seller was on me every few days, giving me value, helping me solve problems as I asked questions about security, this, that, the other, getting me all the details. She has 30 days now to upsell me, to your point, to upsell me to something more. We can't do that in 30 days. It took us 120 days to transition and to figure out what was working. So after 30 days, I get transitioned to an account manager. Guess how many times I've heard from that account manager from the very first email, from that email that she introduced me? How many times?
Once.
0.
Okay.
0 times.
That's a farmer right there.
That's a farmer. Exactly right. Here we are. And now we're 6 months in. We ran out of licenses. We've been out of licenses for only about almost 30 days. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, no alerts by the company to the sales rep. He didn't even respond to the introduction message that was sent.
By the way, what was the name of the company again?
I feel bad. Ignite. It was Ignite.
Ignite. Listen, you idiots. This is where you're losing money. This is why upselling is the new prospecting, because this is where you're losing business. They're so focused on acquiring the clients, they're not worried about upselling them and cross-selling them down the road, which is where, again, some easy money is at.
Yeah.
Here you are ready to buy. Here you are with your credit card ready to fly out of your pocket, but nobody there to take it.
And the sad part is the person that I know is the wonderful sales rep that I had, Lucy from Ignite. And the first person I want to go back to is Lucy. I want to talk to Lucy because Lucy deserves that sale, not the other person who's never even contacted me, not one time.
Lucy, what you need to do is quit Ignite and come over to work for Mario. That's what you need to do. Listen to me, Lucy. Listen.
Come on down, Lucy. Come on down.
I bet she has a better compensation plan too.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about in terms of this concept of upselling and having the right person in the what we now call farmer role, which really should be account manager role, which really should be, if you're an account executive, as an account executive, as account executive.
Mario, I don't mean to interrupt, but here's an interesting thing. How is that account manager measured? Do they have a quota, or do they have simply KPIs like simple, did you send an email once a month? Did you call once a month? Or do you actually have a number? Because too often, I got into a conversation today with another gentleman, we're doing another podcast. He was proposing that a quota isn't important, just proposing as an idea. And I said, well, you need a number. You know what I mean? To measure somebody against. I'm not saying that's the only metric, but that's an important metric. And I bet you this account manager doesn't have a quota.
In all my years of ever having account management, we always had a quota. But I would be surprised if the person didn't have a quota. But here's the reality of it is usually it goes to a 1 to whatever it is, 50, 100, 175 accounts. And at that point, you've lost the value of why you created a hunter and a farmer team. And that's one of the challenges I see in the industry is I'm hunting. I've got now 30 days, maybe in some comp models I've seen up to a whole year to upsell the account, right? Then I turn it over, and the quote farmer, as we talked about in that particular role, has generally between 1 to 100 accounts in their deck. How can you be effective at that?
That to me is a management problem, because let's say that we have 100 accounts in a portfolio. This account manager has 100. And by the way, the reason I say he probably doesn't have a quota, because I can't tell you how many companies I talk to shockingly tell me, I said, do your salespeople have a quota? Well, yeah, kind of. I go, what? What was this kind of stuff? Do you know what I mean? Well, we set goals for them to hit. I said, is it a goal or is it a quota? Which is it? I just need to know. And I said, what's the difference? Well, one has compensation tied to it. The other doesn't. And so my point is that, because this is a management problem, it's a belief system a manager has a problem with. If you have 100 accounts that you just hand it to one person, then your mindset as a manager is that person is only supposed to manage those accounts. Now imagine if you hired a different manager, one that said, hey, you see these 100? They need to be producing at least, let's say, just invent a number, 50,000 each a year.
Right.
And if they're producing each 50,000, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hire more salespeople to service these 100. I'm going to split these 100 into 25. So I'll hire 4 salespeople because I know I'll sell this group more. It is a management problem that they get into account manager mode. And you know how this works. Account managers who are not good at selling usually go into management. And when they go into management, they manage other people who can't sell. Farmers managing farmers.
That's exactly right.
Begets more farmers. How's that?
Yeah, that's exactly
right.
Is
that too harsh? Is that too harsh? I think it's too harsh.
No, it's the reality. And then I think that's when we think about our systems that we put in place for sales organizations. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have an account management team. I'm not saying that at all.
I'm not saying that either. You should.
You should.
I'm okay with that. If that is your model, I agree with you.
Yeah. But to your point, give them a quota, number one. And how do you measure that they're engaged with the upsell process? Because we all know that we can get a heck of a lot more money from our existing base that should know, like, and trust us.
Right.
And it's a lot easier to get that money than it would be going to find net new business. That's right. The challenge.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I'll get your thought on this, Victor. And we're on this concept of upsell. And
sure.
Here at Vingresso, we have an e-commerce platform and people come in all the time and they're buying stuff on e-commerce, are selling with LinkedIn for their prospecting training, are selling with Sales Navigator prospecting training, our LinkedIn profile makeovers for individuals, right? I want to look sexy online and help myself, be able to stand out when I'm engaging with buyers. It comes in all the time, boom, 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 right? Well, before we didn't touch it. There was too much volume coming in that I really couldn't put any attention to that because we had the bigger ticket items, if you would, are our corporate sales training programs. So it was nice to have this, but now we brought on a new sales organization, of which all 3 of them are Latino men, And now what we're doing is every new customer order that comes in on e-commerce, it's being assigned to the seller, and the seller gets to get compensation for that e-commerce order because we're all in it together in terms of social advertising, social messaging, all that stuff. But their job is to call that person up in less than 24 hours from the order and see how they can upsell, because they usually only bought one product and there's usually a possibility that they need 2. So people have asked me, like, you're getting this money, why would you want to pay somebody a commission on something that the company already drove? Because what I'm looking for is if I can pay them on that, they're also going to be motivated to upsell something bigger to get a bigger commission. That's my thinking. What do you think about that?
The customer lifetime value is what you're looking at. You're saying, how much is this customer worth? I know I got the original order, let's say at $1,000.
Right.
But I know a customer that fits this profile, has this type of revenue growth, this type of size, whatever demographics you have, will typically buy over the next 2-3 years, $50,000, which means there's $49,000 I can still go get. That's why you need great salespeople to do that, to go get that money. But like the person who's not servicing you, that money's lost. They're not following up. They're overwhelmed probably. And that's because, again, by the way, I'm so superimposing my thought process on theirs, is that if you give somebody 100 clients, you're worried about managing 100 clients and whatever metrics are associated with servicing those clients. You're not worried about revenue. You're worried about servicing. Total different mindset.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I'm glad you agree with me. Now I can go back to the leadership team and say, see, Victor agrees with me.
I think you're right, man. Mara, I think you're right, man. Let's just say, go back. Hey, I'm right.
I love it. So I want to talk a little bit about this concept of upselling versus inbound and outbound and get your concept on what's the difference. But before we do that, I want everybody to listen to this message from our program sponsor. Every sales rep executes a cadence when they reach out via email, phone, or social media to initiate a conversation with a potential prospect. The art of a cadence is determined based on a myriad of factors, fueled primarily by a sales rep's intuition regarding the company and contact that's being pursued. However, there are a lot of questions that aren't always clear when initiating a conversation and creating a successful cadence. Zant has authored the definitive guide to sales cadence. This ebook answers questions such as, how many times should the rep attempt to contact? How long should the rep wait between attempts? What methods are most effective and more. Download your free copy of Definitive Guide to Sales Cadence at salescadenceguide.com. That's salescadenceguide.com. And now back to our program. All right, right before that program break, I asked you about the difference between inbound versus outbound and comparing that to upselling. Talk a little bit about that. How does upselling compare to inbound and outbound selling?
Great segue into my upcoming book in May. Upselling is new prospecting, because I call upselling the third option. The first option is outbound, the outreach program, right? Now, the great thing about outreach program is you can control who you're going to contact, the quality of your leads. The problem is that depending on whose study you believe, it takes somewhere between 9 to 12 calls just to make contact, not to get the meeting, just to make contact. And so the sales cycle just to get the meeting is very long. And so that's the downside of outbound. And by the way, I don't live in a binary world where I say it's either this or that. I'm in a world of gray areas. So I would use every strategy you can. So outbound is a great strategy. I hate when people say cold calling is dead. If you said cold calling is dead, you're just an idiot. I have nothing else for you at this point. Now, on inbound, the inbound is, again, that's why I live mostly on inbound, because I like to create content that attracts people to me, almost like putting chum in the water. I call it information chum. Throw it in the water, let the sharks come to the surface, come get some of this, right?
Right.
And so the good thing about inbound is that you create content, people come to you, the costs are typically lower and the frustration is lower. But the downside, you can't control the quality of people you get.
Exactly.
Typically, my close rate when people call me, it's no exaggeration. It's got to be in the 80% range if they call me. But again, I'm not going to take too much credit for that, because they've seen enough content online that they know who I am. So it's when they call me, it's just a matter of let me talk to the guy, see if he sounds sane on the phone, and then let's just see if we can agree on a price. And so those are the two options, and I say both are valid options. The third option is the upselling, which is it's almost like outbound, but you're outbounding to customers you already have. So it's outbound prime, I guess, where you can outbound. Yeah, I just totally made that up.
You should go get that domain, outbound prime.
Outbound prime, just made that up. What it is that you reach out to people, they already know who you are, they've bought from you, and if you service them correctly, why not do it? So again, the upselling strategy, it should be taken as seriously as inbound and outbound.
When you think about some of the corporate customers that you've got, what percentage, approximately, leads come from marketing and the inbound?
I think about if I were just finger to the wind.
Yeah, finger to the wind.
I'm going to go with the 80-20, 80 inbound.
80 coming in.
80 inbound.
Wow.
Again, it really depends on the company, right? Let's go to both ends of the spectrum and we'll visit the middle. If you go to a technology company, a high-end technology company, we're talking, I don't know, they sell fiber optics, antennas, transmitter, high-end stuff, servers, all that stuff. That's outbound. Because they're reaching out and they know who their market is. They know who they need to talk to.
Sure.
Now, on the other hand, you have transactional. That's all inbound, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nobody's going to do outbound calling for a $20 watch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then somewhere in the middle, the small, medium-sized businesses, a lot of them are doing inbound because they're getting frustrated with the calling and, the ability to connect and meet with people.
Yeah.
So the majority of people I work with are typically small, medium-sized businesses, which is why I see most of them going with the inbound. Yeah.
Which, by the way, is absolutely, the whole organization has to have that inbound strategy. And one of the things that we evangelize as well is especially if you've got our organization, we have 40 people, our contractors, full-timers, and our partners all inside the organization. We're social sharing fiends, meaning we're sharing content, valuable content to the marketplace all the time. Last year alone, we reached 65 million people according to Brand 24, right? Now compare that to some of the large sales training companies, some of the largest of large. Their reach was about 6 to 7 million people that they reach because they haven't equipped their entire sales organization, employee organization to share. And we've developed what we call the connection strategy, which is what we teach to our clients, right? So you've got the connection strategy to prospects and customers. Now, if you can develop the connection strategy, which is the outbound, and marry that with the inbound
Sure.
by sharing content, you're like bringing these two worlds together. What we've
Yep.
generally seen in the B2B space is marketing is generally producing around 30, maybe 40% of the leads. And the sellers have to go produce that other 40 to 60% of their own outbound prospecting, which is what we call outbound. But I think you're right. You've got the watches, that's probably all inbound. And then you've got these high end, that's probably all outbound. And then you got the middle, right? So
It's, by the way, that middle is so big. I'll give you two examples of where it's in the middle, but outbound makes no sense. Real estate agents.
yeah.
Outbound makes no sense. If you're a pool company, how the hell do you know who wants a pool? You can't do any outbound. You have to do inbound.
Yeah.
But again, if you're selling specific services, then you want to do maybe outbound calling. So it's such a big middle. That's why it's a hard question to answer. But I'm just saying, people I deal with, when I ask the question, how do you gather them? 80% typically say inbound is where the majority of the leads come from.
Yeah. Let's just agree that's 50%. All right.
Sure.
Just 50% for this discussion. There is some portion, the other 50%, that sellers have to go figure out. And to your point, you've got the outbound strategy, which is sometimes painful. And then you've got the upsell strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of hit me because we have business plan presentations that every person in our company has to do, no matter what level position you are at. Every person has to have a business plan, and more specifically, what they're doing over the next 90 to the rest of the year, 90 days to the rest of the year, and how they should be measured by the success of what it is that they're doing. And one thing that I really didn't even think about is, how do we actually capitalize on that upsell strategy as part of the business plan model?
Correct.
Yeah. And that's both a marketing and a sales strategy. Would you agree?
I would agree 100%. 100%. It's so overlooked. I mean, when I came up with the concept for the book, it was almost like you slap yourself in the forehead, go, okay, why didn't I think about this before?
Right.
Because nobody has a strategy. Think about the last time, if you've ever heard anybody talk about their upselling strategy towards the market. You've never heard it, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about it. When I did the research for the book, I said, who's written any book on upselling? And I saw a couple of things here and there. And one person wrote a book on upselling like in 1970.
Wow.
It was so dated, you couldn't really use it. And I realized, my God, nobody's talking about upselling, which is like, again, it is the form of prospecting, but in a very warmer way. Again, the outbound prime type of thing.
Yeah.
It's just so classic. And so I would venture to guess 98% of companies don't have an upselling strategy.
Yeah.
By the way, by upselling strategy, I don't mean just simple call up, and I mean really dig into how do we get more? What's the real wallet share?
So it's interesting what you talk about, because we're a HubSpot customer, HubSpot CRM, and in HubSpot they call you, after customer you have what's called evangelist, right? Mm-hmm. And the evangelist is that you want to make your customer a raving fan of yours, and that they're out there getting referrals, and how do you develop strategies around that. And that really is the marketing side of the upselling, right? That's the marketing side.
By the way, one could tie Net Promoter Score into a way of upselling strategies. You know what I mean? Promote us, people like us. Yeah.
Yeah. Who says they're happy? Go talk to them.
Yeah. There you go.
Right? Exactly. The sales part of that is what are you going to do at a tactical level and a strategic level to cross-sell across business units, assuming that there may be multiple business units, and or sell more of whatever it is that you've got with if it's a smaller business.
So your point, it's just so on, and it's in the book. I talk about, one is you can go deep. What else can you sell them within that vertical, so to speak? That's the upselling piece. Then the cross sell. You bought the iPhone, you improved the memory, but now you got the case and everything else that goes with it for the cross sell. In the book, I talk about, do you map it out for the farmers, for the account manager? For example, I sold them a notebook, which means the path to upsell for this company is from notebook. Now they're going to want the pen. Now they're going to want to buy a marker. Definitely going to buy a blackboard or a whiteboard down the road. Then you give them a path to here's what you sell them. Instead of just saying upsell them something, imagine us giving them a path depending on what the customer purchases. People who bought this typically buy this.
Yeah.
Amazon's form of upselling. What if we gave our account managers that? Companies who buy this typically will always buy this, this, and this. So that's what you need to sell. And what if we actually, through our CRMs, track, or let's just say put a number, almost like a credit score, of how much that customer should buy? Wouldn't that be cool? Okay, that customer that bought this is a $50,000 customer, started out at 20,000, got to get them to 50.
Hey, Victor, I think we just invented our new software technology for the sales industry.
That's it, right?
We got to find that. We got to find that magical thing that actually is going to help us figure that out and make those predictions. But I think what you're describing, though, is what we would call making upselling part of the sales process. Yeah?
That's correct. That's correct. In my last book, it's called Sales Ex Machina, How Artificial Intelligence is Changing the World of Selling. And it really takes a deep dive into how AI, predictive analytics, is helping us actually manage and grow accounts. So imagine now that if we're capturing all this information in our CRM, right? Now imagine one step further that the system, the algorithm is able to spit out, look, this customer, their most likely path to buying is going to be this, this, and this. If the algorithm can give us the path and the actual numerical number, that technology exists today. We could use that. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I get excited about that stuff, man.
This is great because actually, to your point, this is called the Modern Selling Podcast.
Yeah.
And what you're describing is not anything that we shouldn't have already thought about. But this is really part of modern selling, right? Like this is part of the developing your sales process, part of developing your cadence, part of actually bringing in marketing and bringing in sales together and saying, what's the strategy to make them raving fans so they can refer us? And oh, by the way, so they can buy more.
Yeah. But on the buy more, here's what the data is showing.
Yeah.
Imagine the data telling you now, here's what they're going to buy next. Like literally, the machine learning algorithms will tell you, here's what they're going to buy next. Here's what you should, if you want a high probability of closing, go down this product path. And imagine now the account manager gets that information, doesn't wait for it. The system gives it to them. So now before you make that dial, the algorithm actually gives you some suggestions on conversation points and key points they want to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the magic of AI that I think people still haven't wrapped their brains around. I think, and I'll get off my soapbox 1 minute here. We simply have not understood what the AI algorithms can do for us and our sales process, specifically in the upselling phase in post-sales efforts. We haven't realized it.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it.
So while we don't have the AI that you're referring to in our company, which is with using HubSpot Sales CRM, that is not available. And it's so funny. I did not read the book yet, of course, because it's not out yet, guys. It's not out yet. But anything coming from Victor, I read. Okay. So, but what's interesting is in our CRM, I said to our automation team, I said, look, when a seller looks at this record, I don't want them to have to go click on the company, then click and see what the opportunities were that were sold. I want them to know immediately on any contact that comes into the record that has an @domain.com address that is a customer. I want them to know that every contact that comes in one spot, what are all the products and services this company has purchased at a corporate level and at an individual level. Why? To exactly what you just described. I now can look at it and say, oh, we have 2 products that we sell to the SMB marketplace as an example. Oh, they only bought 1.
Yeah.
Make it easy for me to go figure that out so I can know what my talk track might be.
Yeah.
Furthermore, what we also did was as well in our CRM is in the account view, when you open it up, we now bring in all the insights to everywhere that person has been, how many times they've been to the site, how many pages they've seen, what are the top pages that they're viewing, and you get some amazing insights. By the way, if they viewed our Selling with LinkedIn sales prospecting training 25 times and haven't bought, I don't know, might be a good opportunity to be able to sell them that particular product, right? Yeah. Or if they're a customer, upsell them to that particular product.
I love that. In the book, the Sales Ex Machina book, I highlight Salesforce.com's Einstein system and Watson, IBM systems. Yeah. And in those systems, they can actually predict what the customer is going to buy, what the buying path is. But more importantly, they can prioritize your call list for you. The algorithm does this for you. It tells you who do you call, who's more likely to buy, who's right there, who's simmering. Now imagine that you got this dashboard. You're almost at the end of the quarter. The dashboard tells you this is where the gold is for you to cross. These are the top 10 accounts that will help you get there. I mean, that's where I think we move away from, I'll use the word automation because to me, that's a rule-based system.
Yeah.
If then go to AI, where it's pure machine learning at another level. And so anyway, that's another topic.
I love it. Well, that has been a fantastic conversation. Any tips that you might give to a sales leader listening in right now? What should they, other than buy the book, which by the way, we're going to put the the link, the pre-order link that you can have inside the show notes. Other than buy the book, what should I walk away with right now, or what should I do?
Up to 30% of revenues can be gotten from upselling. I mean, boom. If I just say that, then build a strategy and ask yourself, what's my upselling strategy with my salespeople, and how am I training them to get more money? I can talk strategies and tactics, but simply having that mindset, just shifting that, my God, up to 30% more money. And second, I would tag on what we talked about already. Stop looking at today's sales. Ask yourself, what's my customer lifetime value? What's that length? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? And if it's 3 to 5 years, what's that number that floats above the company's head? That's how much money I should get at the end of 3 to 5 years. Because then again, you can have this debate about what's more important, quota or customer lifetime value. It's an interesting question. So I would say shift your mindset up to 30% and ask yourself, what's the lifetime value of a customer, and how do we get that money?
There you have it from the man himself, Victor Antonio. Victor, if someone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way? Is it LinkedIn? Do they tweet at you? What's the best way?
VictorAntonio.com. Just say, Mario sent me. That's it.
There you go.
It. Mario sent me. That's it. Mario sent me, and then I'll pay attention.
They don't pay attention. That's it. And if they want to connect with you on LinkedIn, please send a personalized connection request and say you heard Victor on the Modern Selling Podcast. Go out and get the pre-order of his book, Upselling. Victor, one last question for you. Final question. Your all-time favorite movie, what is it? And I bet you're going to tell me it's a samurai movie.
No, it's Citizen Kane.
No.
It's actually Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane by Orson Welles.
Okay.
You've never seen it?
I don't think I have.
How could you have not seen Citizen Kane? Well, Citizen Kane is known for how it was shot. It was one of the first, I won't spoil it for you, Orson Welles, Citizen Kane, classic. Then you'll understand what Rosebud means.
All right. I love it. All right. Well, there you have it. We'll have that in the show notes as well. For those of you that haven't seen it, we'll be able to get a link to that as well.
By the way, can I just say this? If you've seen Citizen Kane, so I don't feel alone, just put somewhere in the comment, I've seen the movie, I know what it is. Because apparently Mario is just like so millennial upped. He doesn't know what the heck's going on.
I'll tell you, for the last 9.5 years, I don't get to watch my own programs, my own TV shows, nothing. I don't get to watch anything because every time I touch the TV, one of my two boys at, he's actually be 10 in June, 10, and the other one is 6. They basically take over. And it's like, I'm not going to fight him. It's like, all right. So that is probably older than 10 years old. And if that's the case, hey man, I had my nose down. I was selling. I was out.
By the way, you're in that bubble. You're in that child bubble. I get it, man. I by the way, I was there too. Why I just abandoned the world and took care of the fam.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. There you have it, guys. This important message right here from our program sponsor. Don't turn that dial. Listen to it right now. Zant, the enterprise leader in sales engagement, has authored The Definitive Guide to Sales Cadence. This ebook answers questions such as, how many times should the rep attempt to contact someone? How long should the rep wait between attempts? And many more. Download your free copy of The Definitive Guide to Sales Cadence at salescadenceguide.com. That's salescadenceguide.com. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a rating and review on iTunes. I would appreciate it. Also, if you want to easily find our show, just go to themodernsellingpodcast.com. Hey, since you'll be on our site, be sure to check out our Modern Marketing Engine podcast hosted by my co-founder and CMO, Bernie Borges. Thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.